Beamy Calvin, 29, operations engineer, calm voice, permanently vibrating phone. Rent a small apartment, thin walls, loud neighbors, quiet dinners, early alarms. Work sits where software touches warehouses, drivers, scanners, schedules, and penalties. Most nights, I babysit integrations and fix incidents before they become headlines. Checklists keep me functional when fatigue tries turning my brain into soup. Monday morning arrives with an email titled Emotional Safety Standards Update. The body shows mandatory training, mandatory surveys, mandatory language calibration sessions. The next section introduces a new signatory named Tamsin, People Experience and Equity. Her welcome note includes emojis beside phrases about harm and accountability. One line claims masculine urgency often causes unsafe environments. The attachment lists consequences in cheerful corporate language. Missing calibration blocks access to incident channels, which blocks doing my job. That clause makes my stomach drop without any dramatic music. At the office, fresh posters push safe communication and belonging everywhere. Co-workers glance at them, smiles polite, eyes tired. Small talk sounds like practice, new phrases rehearsed like lines. At my desk, dashboards open and I try to melt into screens. The on-call calendar shows my name sitting on tonight again. Rent is due soon, so I decide to keep my head down. The all-hands starts, camera on, polite nods on autopilot. Tamsin speaks softly while describing harm like a scalpel. Her slide examples show a vague man silhouette towering over someone. She promises safety will be measurable and enforceable now. My manager, Hollis, nods, eyes begging everyone to cooperate quietly. The chat fills with clapping emojis like a mandatory applause track. My pager buzzes, so I mute and check alerts under the desk. Back on the call, Tamsin says quick replies can signal dismissal. The irony stings because my whole job is replying quickly when systems melt. The meeting ends, and I exhale, expecting it to fade into background noise. A direct message arrives. Tamsin requests a one-on-one conversation today. Her note cites my body language as closed and resistant. Posture is evidence now, so I accept the invite and swallow pride. I enter a glass room, and she sits with a notebook and practiced smile. Her smile never reaches her eyes, so I keep my hands visible. Her opener asks about my relationship with vulnerability at work. I answer carefully, saying I prioritize clarity during incidents and emergencies. Her pen stops, and she says clarity can be a mask for control. Insult hits, so I soften my expression and ask what success looks like. She tilts her head and says success is making others feel safe. She keeps going, saying men confuse efficiency with entitlement to direct others. I ask gently if this applies to my role or my gender. Her smile widens, and she says that question centers my comfort. I leave the room with my face hot and my patience thin. Back at my desk, a calendar invite lands across my on-call window. The title reads, Tone Coaching Session. Required, no reschedule permitted. The time overlaps the exact period our nightly batch jobs fail. I message Tamsin politely, explaining I am on call and responsible tonight. Her reply says safety work outranks convenience and discomfort. The last sentence labels my pushback a typical defensive pattern. I stare at the screen and realize she can write anything into my file. In the kitchen, water and calm sentences practiced like drills. My phone buzzes again, and a client integration starts lagging in production. Dashboards open, queue depth climbs like water behind a dam. In incident chat, I request help and assign small tasks quickly. 2 responders appear, and we coordinate fixes with short, direct messages. Graphs stabilize, relief hits, and another email arrives immediately. The subject reads, "Safety concern reported regarding incident communication." The complaint claims my tone felt cold and unsafe. The so-called evidence is my message saying, "Please restart the connector." I stare at it. Nothing rude, nothing personal, nothing cruel. The interpretation frames brevity as microaggression against emotional labor. Disbelief rises, so I forward it to Hollis with a short explanation. Hollis calls, voice tired, already surrendering. He tells me to cooperate. Leadership supports people experience. I ask what I did wrong, and he says feelings are subjective, so adapt. The call ends, and I realize my manager will not defend me. On the drive home, my hands grip the steering wheel harder than necessary. At my apartment, leftovers and a rushed attempt to sleep before the pager screams. An alert wakes me, and I stumble to my laptop like a haunted robot. A small failure gets fixed fast, and the morning coaching session returns to mind. I log into coaching and keep my voice gentle and deliberately slow. The coach reads a script about masculine urgency and harm. Urgency treated like sin almost makes me laugh, and I stop myself. I nod along and promise to add warmth and soften directives. A follow-up email arrives. Tamsin thanks me for growth and humility. The message continues, scheduling a team workshop and another calibration exercise. Workshop details include a prohibited phrases matrix attached. The list flags words like actually, obviously, and just as harmful. Incident templates are labeled directive, and my stomach sinks quietly. The workshop starts, everyone in a circle like group confession. Tamsin facilitates, praising vulnerability and punishing dissent with smiles. Her rules ban interruptions, strong statements, and confident language. When she says confident, her gaze flicks toward the men. I try to comply, speaking less and typing polite cushioning around facts. Response times slow, incident acknowledgments slip by minutes. A client message warns about worsening reaction windows and penalties. I forward it to Hollis and suggest we prioritize speed during incidents. Hollis sighs and says values come first. We will adapt. Anger rises, and I swallow it because bills do not respect principles. That week, an anonymous safety survey arrives, and I answer neutral and bland. I submit it, assuming it becomes a spreadsheet nobody audits carefully. Later, a team email celebrates improved safety scores after the workshop. I stare at the chart and see our team jump to a perfect score. The office mood does not match that jump, so it feels like fiction. Tamsin's praise thanks everyone for confronting harmful communication patterns. Chat applause pours in, and it feels like compliance theater. Next day brings another complaint, this time about my facial expression. Someone claims I smirked during a discussion of women's burdens. That call was me staring at logs while a service degraded. Focus can be framed as cruelty, so I go quieter. I schedule time with Hollis and ask for clear criteria and concrete examples. He says criteria are flexible because safety is personal. That answer reveals the trap with painful clarity. My notebook opens, and I start logging dates, messages, and exact wording. Receipts feel paranoid, but paranoia starts feeling like insurance. That afternoon, Tamsin invites me to a leadership circle for accountability practice. The attendee list shows executives beside people I barely know. I enter the circle, chairs forming a ring like friendly interrogation. Tamsin asks volunteers to confess harmful communication habits. Eyes drift toward me, and pressure fills the room like rising heat. I speak carefully, admitting I prioritize speed and clarity during emergencies. She nods and says speed often overrides boundaries and creates fear. My cheeks burn, but my voice stays soft and apologetic. Her next prompt asks me to name who I harmed specifically. This is public shaming, so I decline without raising my voice. Her eyebrows lift, and she labels my refusal resistance to accountability. The room shifts, co-workers avoiding eye contact like I carry contagion. I leave the circle, and an HR document request arrives within the hour. The document is a behavioral improvement plan with a 60-day clock. The goals demand increased empathy, reduced dominance, and proactive allyship. The metrics are unmeasurable, yet they can fail me anytime. The warning says any new signal triggers immediate escalation and separation. The purpose becomes clear. This is a termination script in polite font. I reply politely, saying I will comply, but need concrete examples. I add a line requesting all expectations and feedback confirmed in writing. Tamsin replies that requests for structure can be controlling. She insists safety cannot be reduced to spreadsheets and checkboxes. I copy her words into my log and keep my reply short and calm. Later, payroll shows my quarterly bonus withheld for values misalignment. I stare at the number and calculate rent, groceries, and loan payments. It feels like a punch, and quitting becomes a luxury I cannot afford. Dinner alone tastes like static, and I wonder who else gets crushed quietly. My father's old advice returns: document everything, so I keep writing receipts. Work shifts me into grim night coverage without explanation. New projects vanish from my queue, leaving only cleanup and toil. Whispers follow, and the word unsafe sticks to me like a smell. Tamsin roams the floor, smiling like she owns the oxygen. She greets people with first names and a teacher tone. She stops at my desk and compliments my willingness to learn. I smile back and nod, because any other reaction becomes evidence. Every message feels like diffusing bombs, padded with polite emojis. Clients complain more, delayed acknowledgments create panic and confusion. Another warning arrives from a client contact about service credits and fines. I forward it to Hollis and suggest protecting on-call windows from meetings. His response says, "Do not challenge people experience right now." Fear is obvious, and facts have stopped mattering to him. That evening, Sloan from Analytics pings me with a cautious hello. Her message asks if I noticed survey numbers changing strangely. I answer carefully, saying yes. The graphs look unreal compared to morale. Her typing bubble vanishes, and she says she cannot discuss in chat. Another message follows, asking to meet briefly near the coffee area. We meet, her voice low, eyes scanning the hallway. She says survey exports show manual edits after close. Her hands tremble because noticing things can become unsafe. I promise discretion and ask for proof I can share with compliance. She hesitates, then says she can pull an export with audit fields. I return to my desk, and another client notice lands like a weight. A seasonal surge window starts next week. The schedule shows me primary on-call during the surge peak. Dread hits, because Tamsin will exploit timing again. An invite lands, titled Empathy Circle Mandatory Attendance. The time overlaps the surge risk window perfectly. I reply immediately, calmly stating I am on call. I ask her to confirm she wants me away from incidents. Her reply says attendance is required for safety outcomes. I save that email and mark it in my log with a star. I prep anyway, alerts, backups, and a clear runbook. The empathy circle begins, and my laptop stays closed like contraband. Tamsin smiles from the center like a judge about to speak. She says men must hold space instead of fixing. My phone buzzes, and I ignore it for 30 seconds, hating myself. The buzzing continues, and error rates rise fast. I raise my hand and say production is failing. I must respond. Tamsin shakes her head and says leaving prioritizes systems over people. I stand anyway because people lose jobs when systems fail. I exit and sprint to my desk, incident tools already loading. Failures spread, so I coordinate responders with short, direct commands. The outage grows, bridge opens, owners assigned, no room for softness. 20 brutal minutes later, the root cause is fixed. Metrics stabilize, heartbeat returns after CPR, and my hands shake. An email arrives instantly. Tamsin reports I disrupted a safe space. She says I enacted harm by walking out. She copied leaders, and my stomach turns to ice. I reply once, attaching her earlier email forcing attendance. I state her mandate created client risk and penalties. I hit send, knowing I crossed a line I cannot uncross. Hollis calls later, angry and frightened at the same time. He says leadership is upset about optics and escalation. He blames my attitude, and I remind him I warned in writing. He tells me to stop documenting like a lawyer and trust. The call ends, and trust feels like a burned cable. I draft a clean timeline of invites and outages. I store copies off network because caution feels like air now. Sleep comes ugly, email threads chasing me down hallways. Morning brings another complaint. Anonymous teammate safety concern. The text repeats rare phrases about dynamics and emotional risk. Those phrases match earlier complaints too closely. Suspicion hardens, so I request a meeting with Quentin from compliance. I keep the request neutral, focused on risk exposure and ethical liability. Quentin replies with 15 minutes, which feels like oxygen. His office has binders and quiet order, calming in a sick way. I show him the email forcing me off incidents. I hand over the timeline and explain client penalties and pressure. His face stays flat, but his eyes sharpen at the dates. He asks for evidence, not feelings. I mention patterns and a witness preparing audit exports. He tells me to bring technical artifacts, not interpretations. I leave with relief because someone finally speaks my language. My inbox pings again. Tamsin wants another one-on-one, marked urgent. I accept, expecting threats wrapped in sugar. She sits too close and speaks too softly. She says leadership wants resolution before things escalate. A resignation form slides onto the table. The offer promises a neutral reference if I resign quietly. I ask for terms in writing because words matter. Her smile falters, and she says, my legalism proves toxic intent. I repeat the request for written confirmation, calm and boring. She inhales and says she will email details shortly. That evening, her email arrives, polite sentences hiding sharp pressure. One line says she cannot guarantee complaint volume will decrease otherwise. I save it and forward to Quentin with a short note. I say this reads like coercion tied to controlled complaints. Quentin replies, do not engage further, preserve everything. I close the laptop and eat a real meal because survival matters. Next day, Sloan sends me a file through a personal transfer method. The survey export shows hidden fields, timestamps, and audit columns. Several results were edited after submissions closed. The editor role is HR admin, not analytics. Edit times cluster right after my biggest complaints arrived. This is the missing piece, and my hands stop shaking for a minute. I message Sloan a quiet thanks and do not push further. I package evidence for Quentin with clear labels and dates. Timeline, emails, complaints, edits, and incident penalties, all in one place. I deliver it in person, and Quentin skims, then pauses. He taps the admin field and asks who has access. I answer, HR leadership and a few system administrators. He says this triggers a restricted audit immediately. I walk out slower because running looks like guilt. Across the floor, Tamsin watches me, then looks away fast. The next week, compliance pulls access logs from multiple internal systems. Leadership tries to keep it quiet because scandal is expensive. Hollis avoids me, suddenly busy whenever I approach. His short message says compliance is reviewing everything now. His tone says he hopes the review ends without touching him. Days pass in tense calm, waiting for thunder after heat. An invite lands, ethics review required for key stakeholders. My name is on it, and dread collides with vindication. In the meeting, Quentin sits with an investigator and a recorder. Tamsin arrives smiling bright, knuckles white. Quentin asks about anonymous portal administration controls. Tamsin says anonymity protects voices from retaliation. Quentin asks who can create, edit, or delete submissions. Tamsin claims only the system can do that, never HR staff. Quentin slides logs forward and asks why her token posted complaints. Tamsin blinks and says spoofing or error. The next question asks why complaint language matches her templates. Tamsin calls those phrases standard frameworks for equity work. Quentin shows timestamps aligning with my conflicts. The investigator asks about manual survey edits. Tamsin says she corrected harmful responses to protect safety. Quentin calls it data manipulation and misrepresentation. Tamsin pivots, accusing me of targeting her advocacy. Quentin says this is falsified records and coercion, not feelings. Hollis gets pulled in. Sweat appears. Memory disappears. He admits he followed guidance and feared labels. Quentin asks why Hollis ignored my written risk warnings. Hollis confesses fear of appearing unsupportive. Fear was her currency, and it spent easily on managers. Quentin ends it, restricting access pending conclusions. Outside the room, Tamsin whispers, "Men always punish women." I stay silent because logs already answered louder. HR channels go quiet, and an interim lead appears. A leadership email arrives. Tamsin is no longer employed. It cites ethical policy violations without naming details. The confidentiality line signals they want no public mess. Relief arrives, but it feels hollow because stress lingers. A new policy appears about anonymous reports. Every anonymous claim now requires trace validation before action. On-call windows are protected from meetings, no exceptions. That clause should have existed from day one. Next payroll cycle shows my withheld bonus returned without apology. They knew. They waited for proof they could cite. Co-workers speak to me again. Some apologize. Others pretend nothing happened. Hollis keeps his title, and that stings more than the posters. Quentin thanks me privately for staying factual and patient. He says Sloane's export was critical and she will be protected. I message Sloane that she is safe now. She sends a thumbs up and nothing else. Weeks pass. The office loosens like a fist unclenching slowly. Then a letter hits my home address from a lawyer. Tamsin filed a complaint claiming retaliation and discrimination. She requests settlement money and a public apology. Old fear returns, sharp and automatic. I call Quentin and ask if I am in danger again. He says the audit trail is stronger than her story. He says her filing triggers disclosures she cannot survive. I provide a statement of facts and dates only. Her claim gets withdrawn after review. Quentin says her lawyer saw logs and advised retreat. He adds she risks sanctions for falsified statements. Her weaponized safety finally cuts her own hands. Routine returns, clear replies, and measured kindness during incidents. The receipts habit stays because trust is fragile. One day I pass a conference room and see a smug mug left behind. The design jokes about tears and strength, abandoned like a relic. I leave it there, no triumph, just a quiet lesson. On the drive home, sunset hits the highway and my breathing slows. Dinner happens, rent gets paid, and my phone stays silent for once. That night, I understand safety is accountability, not slogans and rituals. I promise myself I will never stop getting things in writing again.